Picture this. It's October 1st, 331 BC. You're standing on a dusty plain in modern-day Iraq, and you're looking at an army that stretches as far as you can see. 250,000 soldiers, cavalry, war elephants, scythed chariots with blades on the wheels designed to shred infantry into hamburger meat. This is the Persian Empire, the richest, most powerful superpower on Earth. And you've got 47,000 guys. Most of them are exhausted from marching for years. Their armor is dented. Their weapons are worn down. The math doesn't work. 5 Persians for every one of you, in an open field where they can surround you from every direction. Any rational person would surrender. Negotiate, run, but you're not led by a rational person. You're led by a 25-year-old kid who's never lost a battle. A kid who thinks he's descended from gods. A kid who's been training for this moment his entire life. His name is Alexander. And in about 6 hours, he's going to do the impossible. He's going to cut through the Persian Empire like it's made of paper. He's going to personally charge the emperor. And he's going to win so decisively that the Persians will never recover. This is the story of how 47,000 Macedonians beat 250,000 Persians. Stick with me, because the tactics Alexander used that day are still studied by modern militaries. And by the end, you're gonna understand why he's called the Great. So to understand how Alexander pulled this off, you gotta understand who this kid was. Alexander was born in 356 BC in Macedonia, which is basically ancient Greece's rougher northern cousin. His dad was Philip II, the military genius who basically invented the war machine that Alexander would later use to conquer the world. But here's the thing. Alexander wasn't just some spoiled prince coasting on his dad's reputation. From age 7, he was training with the Macedonian army, learning to ride horses, fight, survive. From age 13, his private tutor was Aristotle. Yeah, that Aristotle. One of the smartest humans who ever lived. So Alexander is getting military training from the best generals and philosophical training from the best mind on earth. He's being built into a weapon. At age 16, his dad leaves him in charge of the kingdom while Philip goes off to war, a teenager running a country. And what does Alexander do? He crushes a rebellion, founds a city, and names it after himself, at 16. But then, when Alexander's 20 years old, everything changes. His father is assassinated, stabbed to death at a wedding by one of his own bodyguards. And just like that, Alexander's the king. Now, here's what most people expected to happen. They expected this young, untested kid to lose control. The kingdom would fall apart. Rival factions would tear Macedonia to pieces. But Alexander does the opposite. Within weeks, he's executed the conspirators, crushed internal rebellions, and secured his borders. And then he does something insane. He looks south at the Persian Empire, the superpower that had been humiliating Greece for centuries, and he decides, I'm gonna conquer that. His generals think he's lost his mind. Persia is massive, 5.5 million square kilometers. The richest empire on earth, professional armies, unlimited resources. Macedonia, a small kingdom with a great army but almost no money. But Alexander doesn't care about the odds. He sells off most of the royal estates to fund the campaign. He borrows money. He's literally going into debt to fund a war against a superpower. One of his generals asks him, "What are you keeping for yourself?" Alexander says, "Hope." That's it, hope. In 334 BC, Alexander crosses into Asia with about 40,000 infantry and 5,000 cavalry. And he's about to change the world. Now, before we get to the battles, you gotta understand the weapon Alexander inherited from his dad, the Macedonian Phalanx. If you've seen the movie 300, you know what a phalanx is. It's a tight formation of soldiers with overlapping shields. But the Macedonian version, way more brutal. Here's how it worked. Imagine 16 rows of soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder. Each guy is holding a sarissa spear that's 18 feet long, 18 feet. That's longer than most rooms. Now, the front 5 rows can angle their spears forward. So when you're looking at a Macedonian phalanx from the front, you're not seeing soldiers. You're seeing a wall of spear points, 40 spear tips per 10-foot section. It's like running into a moving forest of sharp metal. And here's the genius part. The guys in the back rows, They're holding their spears up at an angle. Why? To deflect arrows? So the phalanx is protected from the front by spears and from above by a canopy of wooden poles. It's basically a tank made of humans. But here's the problem. A phalanx is slow. It's hard to maneuver, and the sides are vulnerable. If an enemy can get around to the side or the back, the phalanx is toast. So how does Alexander solve this? Cavalry. While the phalanx holds the center of the battlefield like an anvil, Alexander leads his cavalry, the companion cavalry, like a hammer. The enemy smashes into the phalanx and gets stuck. Then Alexander's cavalry slams into their flank and crushes them. Hammer and anvil. It's simple, it's brutal, and it works every single time. Now, let's see it in action. So who is Alexander fighting? The Persian Empire, also called the Achaemenid Empire. At this point in history, Persia is the superpower. They control everything from Egypt to India, 5.5 million square kilometers. To put that in perspective, that's bigger than the entire European Union. They've got professional armies. The Immortals, 10,000 elite soldiers who never decrease in number because replacements are instant. They've got the best cavalry in the world. They've got war elephants. They've got scythed chariots. And they've got unlimited money, gold, silver. They can just buy more soldiers if they need them. The emperor is Darius III. Now, Darius isn't a bad leader. He's actually pretty competent, but he's got one fatal flaw. He underestimates Alexander. When he hears that this 20-year-old Macedonian kid has crossed into Asia, Darius doesn't even go to fight him personally. He sends a governor. Big mistake. Because what Darius doesn't understand yet is that Alexander isn't just some reckless kid. He's a tactical genius who's been preparing for this his entire life, and he's about to prove it. May 334 BC, the Granicus River. This is Alexander's first major battle against the Persians, and it's a trap. The Persians are lined up on the far side of the river, cavalry, infantry, high ground. To reach them, Alexander's army has to cross the river, which means climbing up a muddy, slippery bank while Persian cavalry is charging down at them. It's a death trap. Alexander's generals tell him to wait, set up camp. Cross at night, literally anything other than a frontal assault. But Alexander? He looks at the river and says, "We're crossing now." And then he does something that will define his entire career. He leads the charge himself. Alexander's not sitting on a hill giving orders. He's on his horse, front and center, charging into the river first. His troops see their king risking his life, and they follow. The battle is chaos. Alexander's fighting hand-to-hand with Persian cavalry. His helmet gets smashed. A Persian nobleman swings an axe at his head. The blade splits his helmet in half and cuts into his scalp. Alexander's literally 1 inch from death. But one of his officers kills the Persian at the last second. The Macedonians make it across the river. The phalanx forms up, and within an hour, the Persian line collapses. Persian casualties, 20,000. Macedonian casualties, 115. Let that sink in. 20,000 to 115. And just like that, Alexander's reputation explodes. But here's the thing. Darius wasn't even there. He sent a regional governor. When Darius hears about the loss, he finally realizes, oh, this kid's serious. And he starts assembling the real army. November 333 BC, the Battle of Issus. This time, Darius shows up. He brings over 100,000 soldiers. The best units, the Immortals, Persian cavalry, Greek mercenaries. Alexander has about 40,000. Now here's where it gets interesting. Darius chooses the battlefield, and he makes a fatal mistake. He picks a narrow coastal plain between the mountains and the sea. Why is this a mistake? Because Darius has a massive numerical advantage. But in a narrow battlefield, he can't use it, he can't flank, he can't surround. His 200,000 guys are forced into a space where only the front lines can fight. Alexander sees this and smiles. This is exactly what he wants. The battle starts. The Persian left flank charges and actually breaks through part of the Macedonian line. For a moment, it looks bad. But Alexander's been waiting for this. He sees a gap open up in the Persian center right where Darius is standing with his command unit. And Alexander does what Alexander always does. He charges. He leads the companion cavalry in a wedge formation, smashing through Persian infantry like a spear through cloth. They're heading straight for Darius. Now picture this from Darius's perspective. You're standing in your chariot surrounded by your best guards. You're the emperor of the richest empire on earth. And suddenly, through the dust and chaos, you see this Macedonian kid on a white horse, covered in blood, charging directly at you with murder in his eyes. Darius panics. He turns his chariot around and runs. The emperor of Persia abandons his army and flees the battlefield. When the Persian soldiers see their emperor running, the whole army collapses. It's a massacre. But here's the crazy part. Alexander captures Darius's family. His mother, his wife, his daughters. And instead of killing them or ransoming them, Alexander treats them with respect. Gives them royal accommodations. Protects them. Why? Psychological warfare. He's sending a message to every Persian in the empire. Your emperor ran and left his family. I'm more honorable than he is. It's genius. But Alexander doesn't stop. He could have negotiated, taken his winnings and gone home. Instead, he conquers the entire eastern Mediterranean coast. Egypt crowns him pharaoh. He's declared a living god. And the whole time, Darius is sending peace offers. Keep everything you've conquered. Marry my daughter. Let's be allies. Alexander's general Parmenion tells him, if I were Alexander, I would accept this. Alexander's response, I would too. If I were Parmenion, he rejects every offer, because Alexander doesn't want part of the Persian Empire. He wants all of it. And Darius realizes there's only one option left: total war. For the next 2 years, Darius is preparing. He's gathering soldiers from every corner of the empire. He's assembling the largest army in history. Meanwhile, Alexander's marching through the Middle East, conquering everything in his path. He's 25 years old at this point, and he's won every battle he's ever fought. But the Persians still have a massive advantage. Numbers, resources, home territory. Darius chooses the battlefield carefully this time. A massive flat plain near the village of Gaugamela in modern-day Iraq. He spends weeks flattening the terrain, removing rocks, making it perfect for cavalry and chariots. He's not making the same mistake twice. This time, the battlefield favors his strengths, and he brings everything. 250,000 soldiers. War elephants, scythed chariots with spinning blades on the wheels. This is the final battle. Alexander arrives with 47,000 men. His soldiers are terrified. They're outnumbered 5-1. They're far from home, and they're looking at an ocean of enemy troops. The night before the battle, Alexander doesn't sleep. He's studying the terrain, thinking through every possible scenario, planning. His generals expect him to attack at dawn, but Alexander waits. He lets his men sleep, rest, eat breakfast. Meanwhile, the Persians are standing in formation all night, ready for a dawn attack that never comes. By the time the battle starts, the Persians are exhausted, and Alexander? He's rested, fed, and ready. October 1st, 331 BC, the Battle of Gaugamela. This is it. The big one. The Persian line is 2 miles wide. It's the largest army ever assembled in the ancient world. The Macedonian line, maybe half a mile. If Alexander spreads his troops out to match the Persian width, his line will be so thin that the Persians will punch through it like tissue paper. If he keeps his line tight, the Persians will just wrap around both flanks and surround him. It's an impossible situation, but Alexander's been thinking about this all night. And he's found the loophole. Here's what he does. Instead of trying to match the Persian line, he sets up his army at an angle. Not straight across, diagonal, and then he starts marching his whole army to the right, sideways across the battlefield. The Persians are confused. What is he doing? But Darius sees the danger. If Alexander keeps moving right, he'll march off the flattened terrain onto rough ground where the Persian cavalry and chariots are useless. So Darius does exactly what Alexander wants him to do. He extends his left flank to follow Alexander's movement. The Persian line stretches thinner and thinner, and then Alexander sees it, a gap, right in the Persian center. Between the cavalry and the infantry, that's the moment. He wheels his cavalry around and charges straight into the gap. The companion cavalry smashes through the Persian line like a spear through paper. And once again, Alexander's heading straight for Darius. For 13 minutes, it's absolute chaos. Hand-to-hand combat, horses screaming, dust everywhere. Alexander's fighting his way through Darius's bodyguards. And for the second time, Darius looks at Alexander charging toward him and makes a choice. He runs. The emperor of Persia, commanding the largest army in history, abandons his troops and flees the battlefield. Again, when the Persian soldiers see their emperor running, the entire army collapses. The battle turns into a chase. The Macedonians are hunting down fleeing Persians for miles. By the end of the day, 50,000 Persians are dead. Macedonian casualties between 1 and 5,000? Nobody knows for sure, but it's a fraction of the Persian losses. Alexander doesn't just win. He obliterates the Persian army so completely that they never recover. The Persian Empire, the superpower that had dominated the world for 2 centuries, is finished. And Alexander? He's 25 years old. He's conquered half the known world. And he's never lost a battle. So how did he do it? How did 47,000 beat 250,000? 3 things. First, terrain. Alexander didn't fight fair. He used geography. He controlled the battlefield. He forced the enemy to fight on his terms. Second, leadership. Alexander didn't sit on a hill barking orders. He fought in the front lines. His soldiers followed him because they saw him risking his life beside them. Third, intelligence. He studied, he planned. He outthought his enemies every single time. Darius had more soldiers, more money, better cavalry, but Alexander had something more important. He had a brain, and he knew how to use it. So what happens next? You'd think Alexander would stop, declare victory, go home. Nope, he keeps going. He conquers Afghanistan, Pakistan, he reaches India. His army fights a battle against war elephants. They win, but by this point his soldiers have been marching for 10 years. They're exhausted. They're homesick. In India, they finally mutiny. They refuse to go any further. Alexander's furious, but he agrees to turn back. On the way home, he gets wounded in battle. An arrow pierces his lung. He almost dies. He makes it back to Babylon, but he's a shell of himself. The injuries, the stress, the years of fighting. In 323 BC, Alexander catches a fever. Maybe it's malaria. Maybe it's poison. Nobody knows. 10 days later, he's dead. He's 32 years old. He conquered the known world. He never lost a battle. He built an empire that stretched from Greece to India. And then in 10 days, it's over. His generals immediately start fighting over who gets to rule what. The empire fractures. 40 years of civil war. Everything Alexander built falls apart. But here's the thing. Even though his empire collapsed, his impact didn't. Alexander changed the world. He spread Greek culture across 3 continents. That's why you've got Greek-style buildings in Afghanistan, Greek coins in India. He founded over 70 cities, most of them named Alexandria. Modern militaries still study his tactics, the hammer and anvil, oblique formations, targeting enemy leadership. He proved that leadership matters more than numbers. He proved that intelligence beats brute force. And he proved that a small, well-trained, highly motivated force can beat a massive, disorganized army, every time. So the next time you hear someone say, "We don't have enough resources," or "We're outnumbered," or "It's impossible," remember this story. Remember that a 25-year-old kid with 47,000 soldiers beat a superpower with 250,000, and he did it 3 times. If this story changed how you think about strategy, hit that like button. Subscribe for more impossible victories. And drop a comment. Do you think modern militaries could beat Alexander's tactics? Next video, we're covering the Battle of Thermopylae. How 300 Spartans held off 1,000,000 Persians. You're not gonna want to miss that. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.